Hey there YouTube, Travis here. So today we're taking a last look somewhat at the 1977 Benelli Blazer. Originally this was just going to be a kind of exit video for this bike, but this is also a really good opportunity to talk about a topic that I think impacts just about every single one of us. And that is selling mopeds, or in some people's eyes, flipping mopeds, which I don't think should necessarily be the dirty word that it is. But anyway, real quick, so this bike has been really good to me. It's been an excellent stalker over the past year. It still runs and rides great. A few small upgrades we did to it. Ditched the 14.9 and put a regular old Delotto 1412 on there. And it boogies pretty well. With myself on, it does pretty close to 30, and that's just about all I can ask from it. I really like it. It's been a good opportunity. Got a chance to learn it. It's got new tubes and tires. And you know, overall it's in pretty good shape. So I think I speak for the most of us out there when I say, you know, we buy these bikes to learn them, to build them, and to ride them. But at some point, whether it's a space issue or, you know, whatever, you're moving, whatnot, there is going to become a time to let them go. So because I'm out here in the kitchen doing some work on this thing today, I thought it'd be kind of cool to start a discussion on appropriate pricing for mopeds and kind of my take on it. We'll see if you agree. Okay, so let's talk full price. So in my opinion, again, this varies by area. If you happen to live in a particular urban area like San Francisco, bikes are of course going to be more expensive, but as a whole, I like to pay no more than $400 for a step through that is in full good condition. Full good condition. And generally no more than $700 for a top tank that's in full good condition. Full good condition. So how do we get that price? Okay, so in my opinion, if you're going to be selling a bike and asking the full price, should be able to run all the way up to top speed. Bike should also be able to idle. Bike should also have no air leaks. Bike should also have good usable tires that don't have signs of cracking or dry rot. Bike should have a good headlight and a brake light. And also the bike's paperwork should be in line. If you're fortunate enough to live in a state where you don't need ownership paperwork, that's great. Pennsylvania and Delaware both require a title, which this one has. And of course, a tank that's not too unusable. So what happens if the bike is missing any one of the above? Okay, well, that gets a little tricky. Now, for a lot of people, if it's missing one of those above items, the bike just automatically dumps in the $100 to $200 category. And again, it truly depends on a lot of things. The best I can do is offer general guidelines. For example, this Benelli, it's a solid stalker, but to be honest, while there are performance parts for it, for the G2 motor that's on it, they're pretty few and far between. And it's not a parts heaven like a Tomos, Puch, or Minarelli. So that, and they didn't sell just as many as those as the other brands, so this isn't all that desirable of a bike. At least to somebody who's, you know, into modifying it and or wants like the super easy moped. Now granted, it's a wonderful engine design and I do like it, but I mean, I'm putting this bike up for sale for, I think I have it on Craigslist for $300 and on Moped Army for $200, but you know, it just comes down to what the bike is, and it's really tough, especially when you're dealing with a seller who you might think just isn't being too honest or just wants to make a quick buck. They'll tell you all sorts of different things, and you know what, in a minute let's go through some of my favorite things that Craigslisters say. Now of course, as the seller, there's some things you got to consider as well. I mean, I feel that if you've put genuine parts, money, and time into a bike, you're able to be compensated for it. What that comes down to, though, is just really trying hard to get good deals in the first place. I mean, with this one, I was in for the tires and the tubes, the carburetor, as well as the seat that I just put on to replace the cracked one. My parts, my time, and my money, but of course, something to consider is that there's never any money in mopeds. And on this channel, I kind of just advocate for, you know, just the hobby of it and the enjoyment of bringing something back to life that's been sitting. Now, luckily, this bike was running when I got it, but there's a certain joy to that. And I think that transcends kind of any amount of monetary value you can put on it. And of course, with that comes, the performance mods and the fun stuff and the sense of community that comes from the hobby. So again, never any money in mopeds, but it's more than that. And it's kind of hard to explain that to people who aren't in the know. And of course, somebody could have, thrown a bunch of performance parts at a bike. I mean, it could have a kit on it that doesn't run right. And if it's something like a Polini kit, they paid $250 for it, but you don't know, what condition the crankshaft is in. You don't know if they case matched it properly. They messed it all up. You don't know the inside of the cylinder. It's so difficult dealing with bikes that have performance parts on them that aren't running, especially when the seller is a little less than knowledgeable. But again, that's kind of my general guidelines, and if you follow that, you won't be too heartbroken, hopefully. Of course, I'm forgetting the one exception here, and the one exception is your first moped, which you are allowed to overspend on. My first moped, let me see if I can dig up some pictures. I notoriously grossly overpaid for my Blue Pook Maxi, but on the other hand, I got to learn everything on that bike. It needed a ton. It did have the title, but it was rusted out tank, missing parts, and paid like $450 for it. Whoa! So, food for thought. Alright, here's some of my favorite things that Craigslisters say, and we'll put a little bit of a translation down at the bottom of the video. Oh yeah, this bike right here, this bike just needs a tune-up. It won't run right, and I can't figure out why. Now this bike right here, this bike ran when parked in 1979. Now this bike right here just needs a carb clean. Just needs a everything. This bike is rare. I'm a jerk, and this is not going to be a pleasant business transaction. Okay, so here are practices, those of you that might be new to mopeds and kind of just the way people generally think who are into mopeds. Here's the bad. So someone buys a bike, they got a good deal on it, and they turn around, right back around, and sell it for hundreds of dollars more than they paid for it without doing anything to it, and they just immediately turn around and flip it. Now, there's not anything inherently wrong with this. People do it with cars, lawnmowers, and all sorts of stuff on Craigslist all the time, but mopeds are a little bit more special, and these are the reasons that people kind of frown against something like that. First, thing number one, it raises the barrier to entry for mopeds. It makes them more expensive. I think this hobby is truly unique because it's a cheap way to get into something where you have to learn how to fix it. No motorcycle shop is going to fix this for you. If you find one that will do that, that's pretty rare. It is up to you to learn that carburetor, to change your spark plug, to mix your own gas. It forces people to become mechanically inclined, and I think in today's day and age, that's something that's getting more and more uncommon. So I think this is a truly special hobby, and the fact that it's also transportation makes it all that more critical. It hurts people who use these bikes as inexpensive transportation. I've met people who haven't owned a car in years because they just putt around on their moped. I think that's pretty cool. With cheap insurance, crazy fuel mileage, it's genuinely a really inexpensive way to keep around. And for those who are willing to get into it, it's kind of an asset to them. So high-priced flipped bikes kind of hurt that. And it also collectively raises the price of bikes around them. Now, there's a particular television show out there that likes to... Actually, there's several shows, picker-style shows, that are kind of... I know most of the community watches them, but they also are frustrated with them because they raise the prices of bikes that are barn finds or bikes that have been sitting. People think they've got gold sitting under them, when in reality they made millions of mopeds back in the 70s. And here's the real bad. Somebody takes a bike that is running, driving, even rare in some cases, and they decide to part it out. Now, of course, I understand there have to be parts bikes to keep this hobby going. That is critical. But what it comes down to is that if that bike runs and drives good, that could be transportation for somebody, or that could be somebody's project. It's a lot nicer for your first moped to start with one that's already running before you dive into one that's not. So There's a couple people label them butchers out there that if you read through the forums, you can read warnings about who not to sell your bike to because they will hack it up and sell it. Now, I understand. I mean, there's, if the bike's a complete boat anchor, or if it's been wrecked, or if the tank has a hole in it and it's part of the frame, then absolutely, it's totally fine to part it out. But good running bikes parted out is just something that community just really doesn't appreciate. Okay, so where does this leave us? Well, the market will determine the price. That's just kind of how it goes. But the purpose of this video is to not only make you a more informed seller, but also a more conscious buyer. And I think if even one or two people can kind of get the right idea in their minds after this video, then it's all been worth it. Mopeds are a pretty spectacular hobby if you're willing to put the time, money, and interest into them. And a big part of that is the good finds that you get on Craigslist, eBay, word of mouth, honestly. Once you become the moped person about town, you'll find that bikes start coming to you. And the age of finding the $100 maxi that just needs a little bit of work to get started, those days are not over yet. And I think that's pretty cool. You gotta work a little harder, and you gotta be more crafty, and you gotta deal with people who've been influenced by the wrong things when they're listing their bike. But it's still a good game out there. So, alright, well, hope you enjoyed this video. This was just some stuff I had on my mind. Post a comment, some of the favorite things you've had moped sellers tell you, and you too. I'll see you next time.